Most elites in history have always had a vested interest in preserving the societies they rule, and that is why most elites have been conservative. The British aristocracy up to the 20th century is a fairly typical example of such a conservative elite. But the elite that has come to power in the United States and the Western world in this century actually has a vested interest in managing and manipulating social change, the destruction of the society it rules. Political analyst Kevin Phillips pointed this out in his 1975 book, Mediocrity, which is a study of the emergence of what he calls the new knowledge elite, the members of which approach society from a new vantage point. Change does not threaten the affluent intelligentsia of the post-industrial society the way it threatened the landowners and industrialists of the New Deal. On the contrary, change is as essential to the knowledge sector as inventory turnover is to a merchant or a manufacturer. Change keeps up demand for the product, research, news, theory, and technology. Post-industrialism, a knowledge elite, and accelerated social change appear to go hand in hand. The new knowledge elite does not preserve and protect existing traditions and institutions. On the contrary, far more than previous new classes, the knowledge elite has sought to modify or replace traditional institutions with new relationships and power centers. And egalitarianism and environmentalism serve this need to create and manage social change perfectly. Traditional institutions can be depicted not only as unequal and oppressive, but also as pathological, requiring the social and economic therapy that only the knowledge elite is skilled enough to design and apply. The interests of the knowledge elite in managing social change happen to be entirely consistent not only with the agendas of the hard left, but also with the grievances and demands of various racial and ethnic groups that view racism and prejudice as obstacles to their own advancement. So that what we see is an alliance between the new elites and organized racial and ethnic minorities to undermine and displace the traditional institutions and beliefs of white Euro-American society, which just happen to be the power centers of older elites based on wealth, land, and status. This process of displacement or dispossession is always described as progressive, liberating, or diversifying, when in fact it merely helps consolidate the dominance of a new class and weaken the power and interests of its rivals. Furthermore, what this understanding of the real meaning of egalitarianism leads to is that when we see university deans and presidents, quote, caving in to the demands of the hard left, they are not really displaying traits of weakness and appeasement. Universities are the breeding grounds of egalitarianism and its applications to society by the elites, and hence they occupy a special and strategic place in the functioning of the system. If the ideology of egalitarianism were abandoned, many of the functions that universities now perform in the way of research and much of what their faculties do in designing egalitarian social programs and therapy would become obsolete. When the universities cave in to the left, therefore, they are simply, in reality, pursuing their own interests, which are to preserve the political ideology of egalitarianism intact and suppress or silence those who dissent from it. And then they are, in that respect, in fact, behaving like any elite, like the French aristocracy of the 18th century, for example, when it punished Enlightenment writers who challenged aristocratic ideologies. Their behavior appears to be weak or degenerate or renegade to us because we look at their conduct from the point of view of those who believe the consequences of egalitarianism are harmful and have to live with those consequences. And also because most of us continue to harbor the illusion that the elites that now prevail in this country and much of the West are still in some sense our elites, that they represent us, when in fact they mainly represent themselves and their class interests and the ideology and agendas that serve those interests.